Hello, my name is Aisha Varma. Republicans are hours away from Mar-a-Lago. They still cannot escape the gravitational pull of ex-United States President Donald Trump. Now, the former president's suggestion over the weekend that he could be arrested on Tuesday came just a day before Republicans decamped to Orlando along with dozens of reporters. Now, roughly half of the questions that House Speaker Kevin McCarthy got at his first press conference in Florida were related to the former president or a potential indictment as well. Now, McCarthy both denounced a potential indictment and distanced himself from Trump's call from protests. Here is what he said.
The whip is always working. You see that? First of all, good evening, and thank you all for joining us at our annual conference. You know, last time we were at this setting, we were coming together to put the commitment to America together, to roll out to the American public, if they would trust us with the majority, what we would do with it. I'm proud to say, yes, we did win the majority, speaking to the American public directly on exactly what we would do, and we're carrying out that promise. It's not often you hear those from Washington that keep their promise. So we're 3 months into the 118th Congress, and the numbers actually speak for themselves. Already, we passed 35 bills have passed the House. 30 of those have been bipartisan. It's more than 86%. Pretty impressive. You don't hear that a lot from Washington, but it's the power of the idea can bring both sides together. As a majority, we've already accomplished quite a bit that we promised the American public. Even before taking office, we were able to lift the COVID vaccine mandate on our troops. In December, we told the President and the NDAA to lift it now so we can help meet the requirements that our troops could fill the void of recruitment that we weren't reaching and stop moving the best men and women in the country out of the service, and they were able to stay in. On day one, we kept our promise as exactly what we said we would do, that we would stop funding 87,000 IRS agents and passed it through the House. We ended proxy voting. The members actually have to show up for work. Reopened the People's House to the people, and returned to regular order that empowers members and restores the people's voice in Congress. We established the Select Committee on China, with 146 Democrats joining with us. Too long, America has never spoke with one voice. We already watched the benefits of it. This was all long before the balloon came across America, and they were able to pass the resolution condemning the CCP on that balloon with 100% of Congress, Republican and Democrat, voting together. On another note, we blocked the sale of the American oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to China, and 113 Democrats joined with us as well. Most recently, Congress passed a resolution to nullify D.C.'s new soft-on-crime code. More than 30 Democrats joined with us that day. Even one Democrat experienced a crime in D.C. on her way to work that day. This resolution was about keeping D.C. safe, but it was also about keeping our nation safe. We're watching this reverberate across America, city by city. The defunding of the police, the decriminalizing of many of the crimes has led to higher crime, and we were able to stop that. The President at the beginning said he was opposed to it. We're happy to see now that he's willing to sign it. We passed legislation that would protect senior retirement accounts from the woke ESG investments that play politics with Americans' retirement, which is wrong. Not only did we just pass it in the House, we've watched the bill become so strong, the Senate Democrats joined with us. The President threatens to veto it. We hope he stands with the American public and with their retirement accounts and would actually sign it. We established a subcommittee to investigate the weaponization of government. We moved to protect life and the institutions that dedicate their mission to helping mothers and babies. That is just a pattern of leadership just in the first 3 months. But what we've also been able to do, out of committee, we enrolled the Parents' Bill of Rights, passed that in markup. We'll soon pass that on the floor. We're introducing H.R. 1 from the Lower Energy Cost Act. This will help curb inflation, lower the price of energy, and help make America energy independent. Also cut the permitting time, will help with infrastructure, help with renewable energy as well, and make America stronger all around by curbing inflation as well. The American people deserve nothing less than for those that they elect to keep their promises, what they said that we would do. We took our time listening to the American public on what they needed and what they desired. We put it into a plan called the Commitment to America, and we took it across this country. For the last 2 election cycles that I have been leader, we have won seats. And we have won seats in places that people didn't think we could. When I became leader, Nancy Pelosi became Speaker. We both come from the same state. In those 4 years, we added 5 more Republican members of Congress. We have a majority of a 5-seat majority. So many can say we won the majority even in California. We won in Oregon, Arizona, New York, Florida. We won in places a lot of people didn't believe. And I think it was the power of the idea and the commitment to America. And we're going to keep our commitment and pass that for the American public. With that, let me introduce our majority leader, Steve Scalise. You could applaud him.
They're trying to remain impartial here. Good to see all of you. And this new House majority, in just a few months, is off to an incredibly strong start, fighting for the hardworking families who have been left behind by Washington for too long. And we are just getting started. As the Speaker just talked about, we wanted to come out strong, bringing a good, bold, conservative agenda to the House floor that addressed problems that families are facing all across America. And frankly, most of those problems that families are facing are the result of the failed policies of Joe Biden's reckless spending, radical extreme regulations, continuing to just want to appease the radical left at the expense of lower income families who are paying more for everything that they have to buy to live their lives. So we said we were going to address inflation when we ran and rolled out the Commitment to America. We were going to focus on lowering energy costs. We were going to address our open southern border so that we can actually have security again at the border. We said we were going to fight for those parents who want to have a say in their kids' education and who deserve nothing less. And we talked about dealing with crime all across communities in America. And on every one of those points, we've already been taking strong action. We've had a number of bills pass through the House and go over to the Senate. We had a bill that even some in the D.C. press called a partisan bill that President Biden said he opposed, that said if a violent criminal in D.C. commits a crime like carjacking at gunpoint, our bill said you shouldn't be able to walk scot-free and not serve a single day in jail, as the D.C. Council wanted. When we said you ought to serve mandatory minimums that used to be in place, President Biden said no. We didn't worry about the uphill battle that bill might have faced. We said we made a commitment to fight for those families who deserve to be safe in their communities, and we passed that bill to the Senate. And ultimately, as the Senate felt pressure from people, not just in D.C., but in communities all across the country, as they watched the mayor of Chicago get voted out of office because she was soft on crime, they said, maybe we don't want to be the last ones left on the wrong side of this issue, and they finally passed it to the president. When the president realized the bill was going to be on his desk, he reversed course and said he would sign it. And you know what? I think that's going to happen with a number of these other bills that we're moving forward. As we're on the forefront of bringing the Parents' Bill of Rights in just a few days in the House and having a robust debate on Julia Letlow's bill that really represents the fabric of America, parents having a say in their kids' education, when they just wanted to get the curriculum during COVID. You had some in the President's Justice Department calling them domestic terrorists and saying they shouldn't have that right. When the President had to make a choice over and over again, do you side with union bosses or kids? There was no middle ground. You either had to pick a side. The President over and over again sided with union bosses against kids, and parents got outraged. The good news is Republicans took action to stand up for those parents, and we're going to have a vote on the House floor, and everybody gets to pick a side. Do they want to stand with the kids as well, who deserve the opportunity that comes with an education, or are they going to side with union bosses? And then a week later, we're going to bring the Lower Energy Costs Act to the floor. a combination of about 20 different bills from 3 different committees: Natural Resources, Energy and Commerce, and Transportation, where, again, Republicans are following through on our promises to fight for those families who are tired of paying 40% more at the pump when they fill up their car, or double digits more in their household electricity bills because of President Biden's failed agenda. And so the lower energy cost is focused on fighting for those families. I know Chuck Schumer and others in the Senate right now think that they're going to just be able to be opposed to this and that nobody's watching. Yet all those families in New York that are paying too much for their energy, I think they're going to be vocal saying, why should a senator side with Saudi Arabia sending us energy when they can get our energy from America? We do it cleaner, we do it more efficient than anywhere else in the world. So people are going to have to pick a side. And I hope they side with those families who are struggling. In fact, one of the things we have in that bill, we get rid of President Biden's $6 billion energy tax when he put a tax on natural gasoline that people are paying in their household electricity costs. That's $6 billion more in the pockets of hardworking families that's in our bill, bringing more critical minerals back from countries like China so we don't have to be dependent on China. We're going to continue fighting for those hardworking families who have been left behind too long, and then you're seeing the committee's Judiciary and Homeland Security working on a border security package. You're seeing Financial Services and other committees working on a bill to address inflation. This Republican majority will not stop working a single day for those families who are struggling under the weight of President Biden's far-left radical agenda. There's a way to get our country back on track. The commitment to America laid it out, and House Republicans in our majority are following through on those promises to stand up for those families. And the man who counts the votes to make sure we can pass this agenda is our whip, Tom Emmer.
Thanks. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and everybody for being here. It's great to be here in Florida at the GOP majority member retreat. And just so you can put it in perspective, I left 5 degrees this morning in Minnesota. So all of you who are sitting here, it's so cold, it could be worse. Look, in Congress, we have a lot to get done this year, and we've geared up for the tough fights ahead. But already, House Republicans have Democrats on defense this Congress. We've consistently forced them to make a choice between their leftist ideology or come along with Republicans as we govern. The Republicans have been on offense, on crime, on COVID, on China, on inflation, on oversight, and a whole lot more. Now House Republicans are continuing the offensive streak with H.R. 1, a critical step to combat Democrats' double-digit inflation crisis. And later,
most active, most working-oriented majority we've had in a long time. And the Speaker laid out, we have hit the ground running, implementing our commitment to America based upon the 4 commitments we made to the American people. Number 1, an economy that's strong. You heard from the majority leader our focus on lowering energy prices and unleashing energy independence. We also passed on a bipartisan basis my rein-in inflation bill to hold Joe Biden accountable. Number 2, a nation that's safe. Certainly that's an issue I know firsthand being from New York, where we flipped 4 seats primarily because the soft on crime policies that we are seeing in New York State. We were proud to get bipartisan support and actually get it signed into law by President Joe Biden, who switched his position when it came to nullifying the far-left D.C. pro-criminal city law that they tried to place. Number 3, a future that's based upon freedom. I serve on the House Education Committee, and we are very excited about the Parents' Bill of Rights, which really should be a nonpartisan issue. You talk to parents across this country, whether they're Republicans, Democrats, or independents, they support making sure that parents are the primary decision makers when it comes to their kids' education. And then number 4, a government that's accountable to we the people. That starts with a Congress that works and is open to the people. We got rid of proxy voting, but also making sure that we have robust, productive, and effective congressional oversight to bring transparency and accountability to all of the federal agencies. I'm so excited that during this retreat we have some amazing guest speakers. We'll be hosting our former colleague Trey Gowdy, who is beloved across this country, and we also are featuring NFL quarterback Drew Brees. So we're excited for those speakers, and most importantly, over the course of this working retreat, we will have members-driven discussions on important issues focused on the economy, focused on national security, security, focused on energy independence. So this is us getting to work on behalf of the American people, and we're so excited to have such a dynamic freshman class. One of those, I'm excited to turn it over to Erin Houchin, who won a district in Indiana, and she has hit the ground running, and she was elected by her colleagues in the freshman class as their representative to the leadership table. Erin.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much. I'm Erin Houchin from Southern Indiana, a new member of Congress, excited to be here. Thank you, Speaker McCarthy, for your leadership, and to the rest of the leadership team. The freshman class is already very hard at work. I came here to contend on behalf of the American people and the issues that matter most to them, and I was so pleased when I got here that the Speaker and the leadership team are committed to do the same. I'm a member of the Education Committee. We've heard a lot about the Parents' Bill of Rights, and happy to be an original co-sponsor of that legislation. We are facing a reading proficiency crisis in America, and following COVID, it only got worse. It's estimated only 35% of children are reading at proficient levels. It's why I offered an amendment in the markup to give parents information about their child's reading proficiency. But we're not only restoring transparency or reading proficiency, we're restoring transparency and putting parents back in charge of their kids' education. I'm a proud member of the Financial Services Committee. As a small business owner, I've seen firsthand the disastrous policies of Joe Biden's reckless spending, causing an inflation problem that is putting our very financial system at risk. You will see House Republicans contending against that issue to restore fiscal sanity to this country. I'm a proud member of the Rules Committee. And I do want to commend Speaker McCarthy and the leadership team for restoring regular order to the House of Representatives, putting the power back to the people through their elected representatives. Thank you for doing that. And I recently visited the border. Indiana is 1,288 miles from the border, but in Joe Biden's America, every state is a border state. We lost 220 Hoosiers in the 9th District to fentanyl overdoses that are coming directly from our southern border. We will fight to secure the border. I heard from Border Patrol agents who lack the infrastructure, the technology, the resources, the personnel, and we recently heard in a on-the-road committee meeting that they've lost operational control of the southern border. You will see us fighting to restore security at our southern border, and I'm proud to be part of an effort that we're leading on that. So I came here to contend for the policies that the American people care about. We will contend for those policies. I came here to contend for the American people and the future. And House Republicans, make no mistake, we will fulfill our commitment to America. Thank you. I want to turn it over now to my distinguished colleague from Northern Indiana, Rudy Yakim.
Well, thank you, Erin. It is good to be up on stage here with another fellow Hoosier. Thank you to Speaker McCarthy, to Leader Scalise, Whip Emmer, and Chair Stefanik, as well as the entire leadership team for putting this conference on, where we are coming together and talking about the issues of our time, the things that impact American families. I'm Rudy Yakim. I'm from Indiana's 2nd District, and I came in under quite unique circumstances through a special election that allowed me to experience life both in the minority and life in the majority. And what I can tell you is they are demonstrably different. It's a new day under the leadership of Speaker McCarthy. We've done things like reopen the People's House. Gone are the days of the permanent COVID mentality. We've made our legislative process more open and more transparent, as well as more accountable. But above all, this House GOP is passing fundamentally good policy out of the House. And that's in stark contrast with President Biden. Just last week, he rolled out his budget, an $82 trillion economic disaster for the American people. You know, back in the 2nd District, when I talked to families, seniors, farmers, and business owners, the single biggest issue that we're hearing about is inflation. And President Biden just simply didn't get the memo that you can't solve an issue of inflation by spending more money. His 10-year budget calls for $17 trillion of additional deficit spending on top of the $31 trillion of debt that we currently have. And that's why on the House Budget Committee, where I serve, I couldn't be more excited to be diving into this issue with Chairman Jody Arrington and figuring out how we restore fiscal responsibility to our nation. So thank you to Speaker McCarthy for making the issue of our debt front and center in the minds of the American people and articulating the fact that additional debt and additional spending will only further inflation. You know, Americans put Republicans in charge of the House, and they did so because they expect us to show up, show leadership, and advance good policy. And that's exactly what we're doing. So thank you to Speaker McCarthy and the entire leadership team. I'm proud to be partnering with you as we get our nation back on track. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the Speaker.
Thank you, Rudy. Appreciate you. Thank you all very much. And just to recap a few things. We're trying to make the House work much different than it had in the past. We just watched in the last Congress, members never had to even come back. Some didn't show up since the Speaker's vote. Bills didn't have to go through committee. The people weren't able to even participate or be there. We changed all that. Members now show. Bills have to go through committee, and we did something that I don't know if you wrote about, but actually makes a difference. For the first time in more than 7 years, we actually had an open rule. That means the whole time during Nancy Pelosi's speakership and Paul Ryan's, never did a bill ever come to the floor where any member can offer an amendment. It had been a decade since the bill ever came that way that wasn't in appropriations. It doesn't matter where you come from, you're representing Americans with their voice. It doesn't matter if you don't sit on that committee, you should have that opportunity to have a say in that legislation. The people have a right to be there, and the members should be there working. I didn't have much of a relationship with Yakim before he became leader, but I'm trying to work hard to treat him the way I thought every minority leader should be treated, and I should have. I reach out to him on many different issues because there isn't a need that everything has to be partisan. The American people don't believe in that. Our government is designed to have compromise. I was proud of the fact we had 146 Democrats join with us on the Select Committee of China. For too long, we've given China a pass because we just had one administration change to the next. We've never spoken with one voice. With the chair of Mike Gallagher, what he's doing, if you watched the first hearing, even the Washington Post gave an editorial about it was a new day. And what was interesting is the minority leader, Hakeem Jeffries, and I sat together and met with the Select Committee on China because we wanted to speak with them with one voice to tell them that we wanted this to be bipartisan. We wanted them to come together, that America would never be dependent on China for our medical, for our critical minerals, from so many different angles, that our industry should not be dependent on China. We should bring those jobs back. And how can we work together to make that happen? I'm proud of the fact that I think we're going to be able to achieve it. We've been able to clean up the Intel Committee. For too long, that became the Impeachment Committee. It's not their role. They can sit on Judiciary, where Adam Schiff now sits. And when we first constituted that committee this time, again, the minority leader and myself addressed them together, that their role shouldn't be partisan. By the partisan bickering that happened in the Intel Committee the times before in the last Congress, we missed Afghanistan. We're behind in hypersonics. No longer should that transpire. I want Republicans and Democrats to work together in that. I want them to think differently. And the one thing we have worked on, making sure that we do not lose the battle to AI and quantum, to China or to Russia or to North Korea. The world is not as safe as it used to be. Watching the collapse in Afghanistan, the Congress in the past didn't have one hearing on it. We already did. Why? Because never again should that happen to the American military. Never again should we have another 13 Gold Star families. We've watched that, yeah, closing the Bagram jail, that's where the bomber came from. And a sniper actually had him in the sights beforehand. We could have saved those families. We could have saved Afghanistan from collapsing. And now what did we just hear in the last week? That our own generals tell us that we're less than 6 months away from being vulnerable to an attack coming from Afghanistan again. We watched the Middle East shift with this new administration. We've now watched China take a role. where China now has brought Saudi Arabia and Iran together. That used to be the role of America. We watched where God has blessed this country with natural resources, where not only could we be energy independent, we could help the rest of the world. Our natural gas is 41% cleaner than Russian natural gas. Geopolitically, it would keep the world safer as well. That's why our very first bill, our number one bill, is H.R. 1. H.R. 5 is a parent's Bill of Rights. Why is it number 5? Because that's the age your kids go to kindergarten. You should have a say in your kids' education. You should know what's being taught. You should know if there is some attack in campus as well. You should know what the money is being spent on. We don't think that's radical. We actually think both sides of the aisle should come together. Because when it comes to education, when it comes to your children, they don't ask whether you're Republican or Democrat. And the one thing we do know, our nation will be stronger the better educated our children are. For too long, we had COVID and a pandemic attack the world. But in the last Congress, they didn't have one hearing to know where the origins were created. So yes, we created a select committee on COVID as well. And now we're getting the information that's needed. That's what we promised the American public in the commitment to America. And we will continue to strive and work. During our time here, we have a few speakers on the outside, but not many. If you notice, we've been doing that quite often on these, because we believe it's our time that we work together, that we've listened to the American public, and how do we unite to only make it stronger. With that, let me open up for questions. Yes, ma'am.
I know it's a policy, but of course there are lots of crises that you guys have to deal with, including the banking crisis. Right now, mid-sized banks are requesting the FDIC to ensure deposits up to 2 years. There have also been calls from Congress to raise the caps on deposits backed by the FDIC. Is this something that House Republicans need to look into and do?
I think you first have to go to the question, why are we even having this discussion? Why are banks in trouble? Well, it's a direct correlation to inflation. As the economist Milton Friedman has always told us, that there's only one place inflation can be created, government spending. We watched what the Democrats took the majority. What did they do? Increased spending by $5.9 trillion. We saw the alarming and dangerous numbers come out of the Congressional Budget Office. But when inflation comes up, Milton Friedman will also explain to you, the only way to curve inflation is that the interest rate is higher than inflation. But when inflation started to rise, we watched this new administration tell us, no, it was transitory, as it continued to grow after time. Well, when inflation goes up and the banks park their money into bonds, and long term they lose with each movement up. We watched Silicon Valley Bank get into this situation. But when you sit back and look, and I know the chairman, Patrick McHenry, will do a number of hearings on this to really get to the bottom. We watched them park a great deal amount of money into long-term bonds. Not a smart move, knowing that inflation was going up with interest rates. But we also watched that they're a state bank. So yes, we will probe where were the mistakes. Did the California regulators miss something?